All right, so this is the official marker for my Tribesmen episode with Kaley Z. Kaley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
First of all, I'm honored because there's not that many Sephardim I get to speak to. Like you were born in Egypt, last name Zeitouni. So I'm honored to have a fellow Middle Eastern Jew on the podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's so fun to be interviewed by a fellow Sephardi. I wasn't born in Egypt. My father was,
Oh,
but
okay, there you go.
yeah, we're very, as Sephardim are, we're very proud
Yes.
of being Sephardi, and I think it's actually, yeah, it's beautiful that you are in this role for the Jewish world. So yeah,
Thank
happy
you.
to be here.
Thank you. Now, are you you're in a relationship, right? You're married. Is your husband Sephardi or Ashkenaz?
So he's originally Sephardi. We keep Lubavitch Minhag.
Okay,
Uh,
nice.
yeah,
Nice.
his family's originally from Cuba.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah,
amazing. Now,
we're
now, the most important question, do you cook Sephardi or Ashkenaz?
I can't say there's any Ashkenazi cooking in here.
There you
Recently,
go.
I made schnitzel. That was an exciting
That's
endeavor. Never had that before. Um, never cooked it before. Um, and no, it's a lot of Sephardi. I love cooking
nice.
my grandmother's food. Oh my gosh,
Oh, I
Middle
can't even
Eastern food. There's
imagine.
nothing like it.
Yeah,
And then and what else? And my husband cooks the best Mexican food. He's the best
really.
cook. Yeah.
So my wife is from Mexico City and she cooks amazing Mexican food as well.
Oh wow. Oh
Yeah,
fun. Okay, we
yeah,
have to get together.
yeah, for sure. When you're back out here on the West Coast where it's like 70 degrees today and sunny
Oh,
and
that's
there's not a cloud in the sky, you let me
such
know.
a
You can come
tease.
hang out. And like I mentioned, in January, I'm going to your neck of the woods. I don't even
Hmm.
own a jacket that's that warm, so I need to go purchase something, but we'll make it happen. So
Okay. Well, if you need extra jackets, but in the
thank you.
meantime, I'd much rather come to San Diego.
There you go. There you go. So
Yeah.
welcome to the show. I know that one of my assistants reached out. She sent me like your information, and I was like, absolutely need to have you on the podcast. And for a couple of reasons. One, because I think that um, a lot of what you do is healing through the mind, using the mind, from what I've read. And one of my mentors was paralyzed. He healed himself with his mind. So I
Wow.
truly believe in the power that our mind has and the fact that we tap into such a small portion of our mind.
Mhm.
And not just to heal ourselves, but to heal our hearts through grief, heal our minds emotionally, heal our, so many things that are happening. So
Yeah.
instead of just jumping into like, tell me about yourself and this whole thing, you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 12.
Yeah.
Walk us through how that felt, not just for you, but for your parents as well. I'm curious,
Mm.
but as a father. And then we'll kind of talk about like how you got into healing of the mind and then what you do for others as well.
Oh my gosh. That's like four interviews. What? You just started right out the gate. So it was definitely, it's a really good question. It was definitely different for me and my parents, that experience. For me, the diagnosis, of course, was shocking. Um, there were moments of fear and terror, but for the most part, um, my mindset around the diagnosis, almost from the beginning, almost not like right away, but it took a while, but was really positive. I really felt from the beginning, this is happening for a reason. There's a reason it's happening to me and not one of my classmates. And even if I didn't know the reason right away, I really believed deep down it would reveal itself to me. I would discover that. So I felt a lot of purpose in it, and I felt God's presence throughout the experience. So I felt very held and taken care of. Um, I learned as an adult um, that a lot of things that were happening to me during the process of diagnosis, I just didn't even know how to process. So as an adult, I had to process a lot of the pain and the shock of the diagnosis. But at the time, it's like I didn't have the tools, I didn't have access to those emotions. Like I kind of, I think part of it was dissociated. Um, So there was a lot of it that was really positive and a lot of it that like I just couldn't even access. And so way later, I processed much more. Um, my parents, each handled it very differently. Um, just as like an example, I got the final, it took a long time to get the diagnosis, because at the time it was completely unheard of for a child to have MS, completely
Mm.
unheard of. I was the second minor in the state of California to be diagnosed.
Wow.
So now there are pediatric MS centers. There just wasn't enough information at the time. And so we went through many, many doctors, and the final diagnosis came at UCLA. And I only put this together way later, but basically like we walked out of the doctor's office and out of the hospital and then I was just like it was just me and my dad. But in the appointment was I was there with my parents. So my mom just like she was just so overwhelmed with emotion and like just needed her space to process. And we have friends that UCLA is in Westwood. We have friends who own a jewelry store. They're just like the most amazing humans. We're so blessed to have them. So like she went to them, to like process. So like that's my mom, And at the same time, it's like I wouldn't have known. It didn't register to me. It's like, oh, okay. Abba and I are going to lunch, right? Like that's just, um, at the time I wasn't like, where is she? Later, I was like, wait, what happened? Like, what, that was weird. What just happened? And as time went on, I came to realize that she was like 100% there with me through like my needs. And there were suddenly a lot of needs, right? I needed someone to feed me, shower me. Like
Wow.
the symptoms were very loud at the time. Yeah, I was completely dependent. And so she had to do everything for me. And so she did everything. And yet, like, when she wasn't by my side, obviously there was a lot to process emotionally. But again, I only really put all of that together much later and realized like, oh, this is really hard for her.
Yeah.
She's going through a lot. My dad also had to be really, all hands on deck and he could lift, he could like he had to be very like physically available to help me. But his process was like complete denial. And that was really hard because I wanted to move forward. I wanted to take care of myself. I needed to find the best intervention and the right doctors and the right medication and treatment and yet like I couldn't even engage in that conversation. So because it was like, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. Like this
Yeah.
isn't real. And and so, we know anyone who, has gone through their own mental health journey understands that like, okay, there's grief happening. And it's a really normal response. As a kid, I was just like, okay, but I have to move forward, So we all went through it in a completely different way. Um, and anyone who's going through any kind of diagnosis, it affects the whole family.
Yeah.
Um, and we grew through it. We changed through it. So as much as both of my parents went through their own tough times, there were a lot of gifts that came for our family through diagnosis. We didn't take anything for granted anymore. Not 1 minute. Every morning we made sure to say I love you. Like we just cherished everything. We spent a lot more time together, like quality time together. We started taking trips. We said like if I was feeling well, my mom would come and pick me up from school, take me out of school to go to Disneyland or just go to get a cup of
Yeah.
coffee or something. She's like, this is not what life is about, right? Like now we know. So it transformed all of us.
You mentioned that, you were positive through the diagnosis, that you felt God was with you. Did you grow up in an observant household that was taught to you, or that you grew up with that? Did you go to Jewish day school? Like what happened that was so at the forefront after your diagnosis?
Yeah, so I did not grow up in an observant household, but I always say it's like we define, we have a certain definition of what religious means. So even though we didn't fit that mold, I think my parents were very religious. They did always talk about God.
Yeah.
Any hardship, anything that came up, they're like, God's going to take care of us. So it was part of the conversation. But that said, we were kind of like traditional, but not so involved religiously. And then in fourth grade, I asked to go to Jewish day school. I really wanted to learn more. I needed it. Public school was a nightmare. And so I asked to go to Jewish day school, and that was such a gift through diagnosis, by the way, because it was such a warm community,
Mhm.
and we really felt held through the process. That was like such a gift. And because it's hard, it's one thing to be, I work with a lot of people when they're newly diagnosed with anything. I get these calls all the time. And it's one thing to be someone who has like to be an adult and have to say, you need different accommodations at work. To be a child and need to have those conversations is so hard. And schools today really don't get it. Like they just really don't. It's the stories are shocking. And I just felt so grateful that like anything I needed in whatever capacity. So we made the switch at a good time.
Yeah, love it. So today, fast forwarding to today, you help people who are going through some type of an illness, a disease, to be able to, see the good. It says, turning darkness into light, to still believe in God and Hashem, regardless of what's happening.
Yeah.
Um, and as you talk to them, what do you see in depth? Like if someone is listening, they have a family member, a wife, a mother, a child going through, an illness of some sort of disease, what are kind of like the top things that you talk about with your clients that opens their eyes to knowing that there's a reason, to knowing that there's, you know, that God isn't out to get them, right? That they're not being punished for something. I think that's one of the biggest things.
Yeah.
When my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's and dementia, and then when my mom had a stroke, and I was like, oh, we're so unlucky. And, did we do something?
Mhm.
Does God hate it? Like the siblings start to talk like this. And so it's hard to see the other side when you're
Yeah.
going through the bad stuff. So,
Yeah. It's really crazy. I mean, first of all, I really try never to combat that because when someone's in their own process, you're just in your own process. I could say all the things, it's not going to change how you feel. Like that's real for you. So I really just when people express that, I just try to have a lot of compassion. That's just where someone's at right now, and it's part of a journey and part of a process. I also always encourage people, you feel like you're being punished or you feel like God has abandoned you, you're angry, get it out. I think that a lot of parts of the religious world have encouraged like or taught us like you're not supposed to be angry at God. You're not like um hello, the Torah is like full of people kicking and screaming at God and saying like, you know, take me out of your Torah if you're going to do this. Like hello, like why are they allowed to do that but we're not allowed to do that? So I think it's really important if you are feeling that, you need to get it out because
yeah.
what that person is experiencing is actually a lack of a relationship. And the way we start building a relationship is by being real and honest. We
Mhm.
can see this in all relationships in our lives. And one of the interesting things, I started my career as a marriage and family therapist. One of the number one predictors of divorce is when a couple cannot fight. If you
Okay.
put a couple, isn't this fascinating?
Wow.
I'm pretty sure this study was done by the Gottman Institute. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. But when you put a couple in a room together and you just observe them, the couples that like never disagreed on anything or didn't have any arguments, those are the ones to worry about. Because of course they disagree on things, they're human, right? But if they're not getting it out, that's a problem. If they're not able to say that to the other person and communicate how they actually feel in a real way, those are warning signs. So that to me is profound. That a true authentic relationship is I can tell you when I'm upset. And I know that you can hold that and handle that, and vice versa, that I'm allowed to get upset, and I know you can still love me and care about me.
Yeah.
So I always try to encourage people, you're angry, you're upset, get it out. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, you know, Torah has a lot to teach us about illness. And we are here in this moment in life thinking this is like the worst thing ever. But Torah actually teaches us that illness did not exist in the first iteration. When Hashem created the world, excuse me, when someone passed, they just like sneezed and died. Like that was it.
Yeah.
And it was one of our forefathers that actually requested and said, I need time. I don't want it to just be like that. I want to know. So make me ill so that I will have a sense of time and space with this, right? So we asked for it. as humans, we asked for illness.
Mm.
And I think the wisdom in that is that, or one of the lessons that we can take from that is it there can be silver lining, that there could be a lesson in it for us. So in terms of like how Torah introduces illness, it's so that you can have that cherished time with loved ones and have time to transition,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so that's one example. The Mittler Rebbe teaches us that actually it's one of the sweetest ways that God can give us din or judgment. And it's like, I'm like, what are
Like
you
what?
saying? If you're the one living through it now, you're like, excuse you, like, please get out of my face. There's nothing sweet about this. Like, go away. So I hold space for that too. But what he says is that any other kind of din is like you just have to face it. You just have to go through it. Financial hardship, a car accident. It's like it just like that was the tikkun, that was the thing. You got to deal with it, right? But he says that illness, what's so beautiful about Hashem coming to you through illness, or giving you illness, is that one, the cure existed before the symptoms. So
Mm.
you know that you can get better. That's the first thing he says. And the second thing he says is that part of how you, part of living with the symptoms and dealing with the symptoms, and part of the healing is having to come into a direct relationship with God. So it's really, rather than Hashem saying, I'm punishing you, you did something bad, and you just now have to deal with this punishment, he's saying, I really want a relationship. Can
Mm.
we please be in a relationship now? And I think that's so profound. And when I read that, it was after my healing journey. And someone handed me this book. I was like sitting down to learn with a few friends. I was living in Jerusalem at the time. And they just handed me this book. And I speak fluent Hebrew, but I'd never learned from this book before. And I said to them, okay, well, where are you up to? Because they'd been learning together, right? And I just joined that day. Where are you up to? They said, oh, we just opened to whatever page the day that we learn. I'm like, okay, I opened to that page. I don't know what the topic is. And all of a sudden I'm reading this. I'm like, what? This is nuts. Like, this is what I teach. This was my life. This is what I lived. I created a new relationship with God as I went through the healing journey. And I see all my clients go through that. Nobody comes to me for that, right? They come for pain relief.
Yeah.
Right? And we can all relate to that. You go to the therapist because you want to stop suffering. You go to the physical therapist who's just like, I'm in pain, this hurts. But that's what's so profound when you really do the deeper mind body work. It's like that's why it brings long-lasting relief, because through the process, through the journey, we heal ourselves and we heal the relationship with the divine. I don't tell people that, now they know, but when I'm like selling, my course or the coaching or whatever it is, I just tell people, okay, let's talk about pain relief. Let's get you out of this pain. Let's get
Yeah.
you energy again, go live your life. In the process, it's like, oh my God, I've never loved myself. How do I do that? I don't know, and then you start to discover these pieces. So it's a long answer for some insight around when you feel like you're being punished, but it's real. It's very
It's
real to
it's
feel that way.
it's a beautiful answer, and I want to touch on pain relief. I
Hmm.
know, I shared with you that one of my mentors, he said that through his mind he was able to heal his body. You agree with that? You
Mhm.
teach that. Some guys who'll be listening might be like, "That's a crock of baloney." What do you mean that my mind can heal my body? Walk us through that a little bit, like what that means, what that looks like. And obviously, you believe in the possibility. You've probably had clients who've healed
Yeah,
themselves. I do
yeah,
believe that we have a very, very powerful mind. As I mentioned, we haven't even touched a small portion of its use and how to use it.
yeah.
Um, so tell us, like, how does somebody get pain relief through emotional and mind work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we start with how could the mind create pain?
Okay.
And to understand that most of the symptoms that we're living with were actually caused by the mind, I think that helps to then realize, oh, so can I reverse engineer that? So any emotion that we experience has creates a reaction, a physiological reaction in the body. So if I'm afraid, if I just felt rejection, there are going to be different hormones that the body releases in response to that. And that's a survival mechanism. Okay, so that's from the beginning of time. Because when we were out living in the wild, if I hear a rustle in the bushes, oh my gosh, that could be a lion, that could be a predator. I am prey. Okay, that's not safe. I need to run for my life. So then I hear something, I get afraid. It's an emotion. I feel fear. It's an emotion,
Yeah.
but there's a response that happens physiologically to the fear so that I can run for my life. My heart's going to start beating way faster. My eyes are
Mm.
going to dilate. My digestive tract is going to shut down because I can't waste energy on digestion. And also now's not the time for a bathroom break. I need to run for my life. Right? That makes sense?
100%.
Okay. So that's great if there's a lion.
Mm.
That's not so good if I'm just reading the news headlines day after day after day, or every time my in-laws call, I get anxiety, or I have every time I look at my boss or my paycheck or whatever it is, right? All of those changes I just described in the body, if they're happening constantly, it breaks down. So when people call and are like, my digestion isn't working, or
Mhm.
heart issues, or it's like, well, that tells me that all those hormones are getting released way too often for way
Mm.
too long. The body cannot sustain that. There's only so long it's going to function,
Yeah.
right? Now, this is just the mind-body connection. There are many layers. This to me is the easiest one to understand because it's biological and we can prove it, right? I can show
Yeah.
it to you under a microscope. So then the flip side of that is, can I keep myself safe? And if I can keep myself safe, then those hormones don't have to keep getting released all the time, right? Now that takes a very powerful mind, and that takes a lot of working on the emotions because we react to everything. I'm scrolling social media all day long, and without even realizing it, now I'm afraid to even get up, get dressed, go to work. Like the level of responses just from our day-to-day lives, like the volume on that is so loud, but it's not a lion, but the brain doesn't know that. So your body's constantly protecting you against a lion that's not there. So it's really the process of learning to get safe. And so a very, very quick, easy thing that people can do is something called tapping,
Mm. Okay.
emotional freedom technique. There's an app, the tapping solution. This absolutely changed my life. And on a biological level, it sends a signal to the brain that you're safe. The same part of the brain that activates the fight or flight response is the amygdala. That part of the brain also then gets a signal, I'm safe, when we tap.
Mm.
The other thing that tapping does is it processes our emotions. So that's just one aspect. But the other thing I want to say for the skeptics out there who are like, that's cuckoo, what, like, this is insane. And by the way, I used to be that person, full disclosure, and be like, that's ridiculous, right? Like, so, but I was also really cut off from my own emotions. I was totally out of touch with my feelings. Um, our emotions are energy, energy in motion. If you don't process it, it doesn't just disappear,
Yeah.
right? It's going to go somewhere. And the body, for the reasons we just described, is built to store your emotions. It's if anybody's ever experienced breath work, for example, but Hashem gives us such an amazing hint. Then the word for soul, neshama, is the same word for breath, neshima. And the breath is a very physiological thing, but from our first breath, the breath is storing every experience of our lives ever in the cells unless we process them. So you can also breathe in a certain way to release emotions.
Yeah.
So if I'm not processing my emotion, it gets stored in the body. That's the bottom line. And
Can
we
you,
can point, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, not to cut you off. Can you tell me what that means, process your emotions? Because lots of people talk
Mhm.
about it. People are probably like, what the, sure, I'm going to process, but what does that mean? Like, does that mean I go to the therapist? Does that mean I sit and I cry? What's like a quick summary of process your
Oh
emotions?
gosh, a quick summary. I love when you're
Sorry.
like, Ellie's gonna give me a soundbite, and I'm like, oh
We're
my
gonna do like
goodness.
4 episodes if we, keep rolling.
Yeah, I'm here for it, let's do it. So I think, people need to try different pathways to process emotions, find what works for you, and what allows you to get there the quickest. For one person it's going to be journaling. For another person, it's going to be screaming into a pillow. Um, and please, hopefully not another person.
But
Yeah.
does processing mean getting it out, dealing with
Mhm.
it, solving it? Like, what does that mean for you? Processing.
Um, acknowledging,
Okay.
acknowledging that you are feeling something and naming it, right?
Mm.
If you've ever heard the phrase name it to tame it, we
Hmm.
need to really say, okay, hold on, wait a second, I'm feeling something. And then try to be with what is it that I'm feeling. Most people have no language around this. You can go get an emotions chart on Google, and it's a good start. But for sure, what you feel as resentment is going to be different than what I feel. We have limited terminology around emotions.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't matter what you call it. Just start to acknowledge you're feeling something, experiencing something, and start to, you want to, um, by process, it's like flesh it out. I feel really angry. Okay. What can you say more? I'm really angry that so and so did this or that this happened. And it makes me feel, you know, unseen or invalidated or like I just feel walked all over, stepped all over, you know? I really encourage people like use any language. People will say like I feel like I want to throw up. Okay, like so yes, you feel
Yeah.
like you want to throw up. The more you get into it, the better because what I find is that when we avoid talking about it, it just gets bigger.
Yeah.
Um, I worked as a therapist. I started my career as a therapist and I don't think that talk therapy is necessarily great. For years, people just we were talking about the same thing for years, crying about the same thing for years. And that's where I myself had to go find other tools. And that's where tapping really helped me actually get the emotion out. And you can tap on the emotion. You could say, like, I'm really upset right now, or I just want to cry right now. I would say that for hours and no tears would come until I just was so cut off from my own feelings. And eventually I had to learn to actually let that out. So the first thing is just name it, acknowledge it that you are having a feeling. And I think that's hard, even that's hard to do for a lot of people.
For sure. Well, I mean, a lot of people this is a perfect segue. Before we hit the record button, you said we need the men. And I believe that it's very hard for men to process, acknowledge, and feel their emotions because either we've been taught not to, we've been taught, just be a man, don't cry, or we're not giving, let me say this a different way. Or it's shown as weakness, right? That's the second way. And the third way is that we're given permission to feel our emotions, and then when we do, we are smacked,
Mm,
right? And coming from, experience where someone's like, yeah, just share what you feel with me. And then you share it, and they're like, oh, maybe that was too much for them. Like, well, I just, they get angry or they disagree or you've changed or why are you speaking that way? And you're like, you just asked me to share my feelings with you. And now you've given me like a piece of tape to put over my mouth,
oh, wow.
right? And so a lot of men, I think, go through that. I think that we're taught to have to be strong, and we're taught that we've got to have everything uh, correct in our lives. And so when it's not, we shut down.
Yeah.
And um, I had a Wisdom Wednesday meeting with a bunch of guys here in my office 2 weeks ago. And there's one guy who I see all the time. I say hi to him, and everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. And that day he's like, "Hey guys, I just need to share that I'm broke."
Mm,
And we were just like, "Dude, how can we help you? Like, what do you feel?" And he just like almost started tearing up and talking about it. He was given permission to speak.
yeah.
And so tell me what you meant by we need the men.
There's so much to say. Um, First of all, thank you for sharing that. I think what you just said is really important to shed light on as a society. We really need to acknowledge that. I think one of the challenges that's happening on a large scale is women are doing the work. They're showing up, right? I get maybe one male phone call for like 100 women. Like that's how intense that's the ratio, you know? It doesn't mean, and it's not that the men are experiencing less illness. Okay, that is not the statistic. So, but the women are showing up much more to do like the deeper soul searching and emotional work right now, at least. I really believe that that's shifting. And I think that one of the challenges is that women also are working on. What we need to work on is we want them, we need the men to be doing the work. Um, but it's so new and we don't know
Mhm.
that that's supposed to look different for a man than for a woman that then yeah we grab the tape, it's like I
Yes.
needed you to share but I have no idea how to handle that so just okay no just stop, can you just go back to the way things were. So I think the women need to hear this conversation also and understand that it's different. that men growing and doing their soul searching looks different. And by the way, I think one of the biggest challenges right now is that because the women have led all of this deep Geula work. This is what brings Geula. We think that Geula is going to be like this guy arrives on a
Give me
donkey.
give me the definition of Geula for those who don't know.
Oh yeah, thank you. So Geula is a state of redemption, which would mean which I think has we think right we think it's going to be like this guy arrives on a donkey and like the world comes to total peace. And no, a state of redemption is I live in a state where I see God clearly in the things that are happening in my life. I know that I am a part of what is unfolding in my life. I'm a co-creator with God. And that state of redemption is that I live in alignment, meaning I understand there are many parts of me and I work with those parts of me. I live in an
Mm,
integrated, aligned way. That's ultimate geula. Because then something can happen in my life and it doesn't have to I don't have to fall apart and think, oh my God, I'm alone and God's punishing me. I can go, okay, how are we dealing with this? What am I learning from this? How am I growing from this? The circumstances don't have to change. I myself can be in a state of geula, right?
right.
Which is not talked about enough. But collectively, we've been taught that we've been openly taught the women will lead geula. I'm good with that. That's fine with me. Except that we as women, I don't know how I'm supposed to lead a man through Geula because I'm not a man, and they actually need different tools. And so there are men going through this journey, and it's so profound and it's so powerful and it's so, so, so important. And and then we react to them like as if they're supposed to be like us, and that is the opposite of Geula. We need you to be in your role. I need to be in my role. We all need that. That's why also Hashem, we easily there we go. We easily refer to Hashem in the male form. I think it's just easiest, but Hashem has male and female aspects, and so do
Yeah.
all of us. It's about balancing, right? True Geula is I can balance those parts of myself. I know when I'm stepping into my masculine. I know when I'm stepping into the feminine. I can hold those two, which means I I need to give space for the masculine to be in the masculine, and that's even in a healing. We think that, oh, if a man is like being emotional, he's going to do it in a feminine way. Like, no, he could still do it in a masculine way.
I love that you brought that
Oh,
up because I think that a lot of the men's work that's happening out there is coming through feminine energy
hmm
and not allowing for a man
hmm
to get into his masculine essentially.
Yeah, I'm really
Right?
loving what you're saying.
And so some retreats are like go and meditate for hours and write from your heart and journal. And sometimes I just want to punch something.
Yeah.
Not a person, right? Or I need to get punched, or I need to like yell and scream, or I need to, like I want more masculine energy work to be able to release the
Yeah.
emotions. And
Yes.
I'm saying this because I've done a lot of work, like therapy, landmark, coaches, like just healing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of from the feminine energy, and then we see some of the masculine stuff. Where we're like, oh, that's very alpha, right? But the best the best work that I've done for me as a man is exhausting my body.
hmm
So like when I go to like a Spartan race and I can't walk anymore, sometimes I'll just break down
Yeah.
because it allowed me to feel, So I love what you're saying. I agree 100%.
Yeah. I learned this so much from my husband, actually. We facilitate breath work together, which is its own fun story how that came about because we didn't know that when we met or when we were dating. I didn't know he could do he was a breath work
Nice.
facilitator. I had no idea. But it totally changed how I facilitate the first time I facilitated alongside him. And it was hard for me. I was like, okay, stop, like leave them alone. Why are you being so physical? Like I was so, and I was watching the things he was doing in the room, and I'm like, what is he doing to this guy? Like, but I realized, and the men who come will say like they feel so safe with him, and I'll ask people like, okay, but you've been to so and so. I know all the other facilitators. Like,
Uh,
how would you compare? I'll ask. I want to know, and it's so interesting to me because like they feel the feedback is incredible, and I'm thinking that's insane. I would never facilitate the way he facilitates. but that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I shouldn't facilitate the way that he facilitates. I'm a woman. My women need my energy. The men need his energy. I probably would not be able to do to bring that to the table what he can with them, right? He gets really physical with them. It's
Yeah.
really intense, you know? And I'm
Now
just
I'm
like,
intrigued. Now I'm intrigued.
oh, you gotta check. You're gonna have to come. You have to come. You have to come to our. We've got a healing center. There's a lot
Oh
going
wow.
on.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So you'll come visit.
I might have to extend my trip then. We'll see. Okay.
Yeah, please, that'll be so cool. And one of the things that what was I gonna, when you were talking, there was something that came to mind for me. Um,
Talk about how your husband facilitates as opposed to you.
yeah, but also you were like, sometimes you just need to go out on Spartan race. So I don't remember exactly, but I wanted to mention this guy, Yehuda Kamen. I don't know if you've heard of him. And
Yeah.
what's his handle? I think on Instagram he's Men of Integrity. I think so. But his
Okay.
name is Yehuda Kamen. I just don't remember his
Yehuda
like,
Kamen.
yeah, Kamman. Anyway, so one of the videos I watched recently that I absolutely loved, and I was like, oh man, so many people are gonna react to this though, was he was talking about like the importance of raising your sons, to be men. And part of that included like they need to be able to get all this energy out,
Mm,
So like wrestle with them, like help them get that out. And like as a woman, I'd be like, okay, that's terrifying. And I have so many reactions to that, and like why? I'm like, but I'm different.
mm.
I need something different to process my emotions. And by the
Yeah.
way, for the men hearing this, if if you do need to sit and journal, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? But to understand we're built differently. And I have such a reaction to these women who are running men's retreats. Like where that's not helping a man tune into the masculine aspect that the whole world, the redemption of the world, needs the men to tap into their absolute masculine power, the divine masculine. We are not here to teach them how to be us. That's not the process.
Yeah.
That's not actual true healing, And again, there are caveats, and we all have our feminine side, we all have our masculine side, but like so what we were talking about earlier that I just would love to share light on is, when I take people through the healing journey, it is a Google process. When we heal the body, what we're actually doing is creating more space for the divine to come in. We are building a vessel. Ultimately, God's the healer.
Yeah.
It's up to him. It's in his hands. If he's going to take that pain away, it's up to him. I'm creating the space. I become the vessel. I create the space for more divine consciousness to come into me. The body can relax, the body can come down. I get more in touch with my intuition, which is so important, especially for a woman,
Yeah.
right? We have this immense power and voice in us, and we've been programmed to shut it down, right?
Yeah.
All of us, especially a woman, is like, I want to hear a woman's intuition all the time. Tell me, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Where's your spidey sense,
Yeah.
So, so as we create more space for the divine to come in, like that's where the healing really happens. But how the divine comes in, like the vessel that a woman has to create is very different than the vessel a man has to create because a man is built to hold other vessels.
Yes.
I'm not sure if this is okay. You said yes, so it made sense. I was like,
Yes.
I don't know if what I just said made sense. Okay.
Yeah.
I A woman is built to hold um space things, right? But the man has to just kind of to just hold the frame, right? Hold the frame, hold the frame, hold the frame, hold the frame, which means that processing that emotion has to make him stronger, stronger. Woman has to, and this is also a strength, processes emotions can get softer.
Mm.
That's her power.
Okay.
And we think that power is not in softness. This is something I've had to work so hard on, and it's hard, even as I'm saying the words, I'm like, oh man, I really ought to work on this because I'm just like, it is so it's a true mastery, and it is tough. It's really
Yeah.
tough to think that as I'm soft, there can be strength. Really hard to think that. It doesn't compute, right?
Yeah.
But the issue that we're seeing, I think, right now is as I see all these women transforming, is they're transforming and they're feeling their power and their softness, and their power is growing. It's growing and growing. And then the men aren't doing the work. And so then you have this like super powerful woman, even in her softness, she's super powerful. she needs an even greater power to hold her.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
She needs an even greater power to hold her. And in that in the power that can hold her that a man could bring, she can woo, she can fly, right? Like I mean, I'm covered in chills just thinking about it. But he's got to be able to hold it. And when he's not catching up to doing the work, it's just terrifying for him. So she's growing, he's terrified. It's causing a lot of conflict. We'll all get there. I really firmly believe this. Like we're all getting there. The women are doing it. The men will get there because of the work that you're doing, which is why I'm so
Thank you.
grateful that you asked me to come on and that we're having this conversation today and for everything that you do. Like it's so, so, so important. And the men, but we need more. I need more of this. All of my women are in this. Like I see it. We need it. All the women who come to breath work, it's like they're coming in droves. It's so hard. My husband will plan a breath work group, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's like pulling teeth to get the men to show
Yeah.
up. And mine are like, when's the next one? When's the next one? Can one more spot, please? Can I please come? And I'm just like, it's night and day, you
Yeah.
know? But once the men begin the process, and what's so beautiful is I think it's, I don't know, I'm not a man, but I can imagine it's scary to start. Like, I'm going to be vulnerable. And is it just going to be weakness? And am I going to fall apart? What I've seen is that as men, when you do this work, it's like you are going to tap into like power you had no idea was even possible. Like, it just makes you so much more powerful.
Yeah.
I think to myself so much, we're both farty.
Yep.
So grew up in a family where like zero emotional capacity, okay? And especially the men.
Yeah.
And that's what made you a man, right? Like we're
Yeah.
not going to emote, we're not going to talk about these things. And that's why I didn't know how to process emotions. Like I got in trouble for like, don't talk to me if you're crying. When you're not crying, we can talk. Like what?
Yeah.
What? Like what am I supposed to do with that? Like, you know. And what I have seen is way more powerful is a man that can feel safe in himself while someone else is emoting and knowing I don't have to change it, I don't have to solve it. The calmer I am in this moment, the safer that person is, right? And for a woman, especially, like that's the greatest thing you could give her is safety. But then the safer he feels
Yeah. That
when he's not having to run to solve it.
so I'm going to stop us there.
Oh
I'm going
man.
to ask you, Kaley, to do another episode with me
Sure.
to talk
Happily.
to talk about the strength of exactly what you just said.
Okay.
Because I think it's extremely powerful. And I think that we need to go down that rabbit hole in itself. Um,
Sure.
so
I have
I
no
know you're
idea
like,
what
oh,
we're
but I
going to
want
talk
to keep
about.
talking.
I did not know this is where we're going to go today, but I'm here for it. Like this is amazing. This is what the world needs right now.
Yes, and that's why I wanted it's I want to continue on like a um second episode to dive
Oh.
deep into just exactly what you just said. So for those of you who are listening, if you want to get more information on Kaley, go to kaleyz.com. I'm going
Mhm.
to guess that your Facebook, your Instagram is all there. I'll put it all in the show notes. And stay tuned for the next episode with Kaley because I think we're going to dive deeper, stronger, and we're going to process some more, as you said. So stay tuned. And as I tell everybody, Kaley may be blessed with strength and courage. Chazak v'matz. Thank you so much for being on the Tribesmen podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode, not just for the Tribesmen podcast, but with Kaley Z.